My name is Aussie Peck, and I am 40 years old. For most of my adult life, I believed stability was something you built, brick by brick, routine by routine, until it became too solid to crack. I believed if I loved hard enough, showed up consistently enough, and ignored the little doubts that whispered at night, everything would eventually settle into something safe. I was wrong. Back then, my days revolved around a small boy named Daniel. Morning cartoons humming in the background while I packed lunches, tiny sneakers by the door, sticky fingerprints on the fridge that somehow made the kitchen feel more alive. Daniel wasn't just part of my life. He was the rhythm of it. I was there when he was born. I held him before anyone else did. I signed his birth certificate with a shaky hand and a full heart, not because I was asked to, but because I wanted to. In that moment, I didn't feel like I was claiming responsibility. I felt like I was claiming love. My boyfriend Ryan stood beside me at the hospital that day. He cried. I remember thinking that meant something, that it meant we were on the same page, building the same future. Ryan and I had been together for 5 years. 5 years of shared bills, shared exhaustion, shared jokes whispered late at night after Daniel finally fell asleep. We weren't perfect, but we were functional, or at least that's what I told myself. His ex-girlfriend, Amy, was supposed to be a closed chapter, an old story he barely referenced, except in vague sentences like, "That was a mistake," or, "We weren't right for each other." I never pressed for details. I didn't want to be the insecure woman digging into the past. I trusted him. That trust unraveled quietly, almost politely. It started with a feeling I couldn't explain, a tightness in my chest when Ryan's phone buzzed late at night. The way he'd angle the screen away from me without realizing it. The way his answers grew shorter whenever Amy's name accidentally slipped into conversation. I told myself I was imagining things. I was tired. I was stressed. Parenthood does that to you. It makes you doubt your instincts because you're always afraid you're already failing in 100 other ways. The truth didn't come all at once. It leaked. One night, after Daniel was asleep, I asked Ryan a question I hadn't planned to ask. "Are you still talking to her?" He hesitated. That pause, that single second of silence, told me more than any confession could have. What followed wasn't a dramatic meltdown. No shouting, no slammed doors, just Ryan sitting on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, slowly admitting pieces of the truth like he was testing how much I could take. Yes, he'd cheated. Yes, it had been more than once. No, it hadn't stopped years ago, like he claimed. It had been happening for 5 years. Different women, different excuses. And yes, Amy had never really left the picture. I remember staring at him, waiting for my body to react. Cry, scream, something. Instead, I felt hollow, like the air had been sucked out of the room and I was floating above it, watching another woman's life collapse. But even that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came when a thought, sharp and unwanted, cut through the noise in my head. "Daniel." I asked the question slowly, carefully, like I was afraid the words themselves might break something. "Ryan, is Daniel biologically mine?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at the floor. I felt my heart drop before he even spoke. "I don't know," he said. Those 3 words shattered something inside me. The test was supposed to give me clarity, closure, a clean line between before and after. Instead, it broke me all over again. Daniel wasn't biologically mine. I stared at the results until the letters blurred. Percentages, probabilities, clinical language that didn't account for bedtime stories, scraped knees, or the way he reached for my hand in crowded places. My heart refused to accept it. The law didn't. Because my name was on his birth certificate. Because I had signed it willingly. Because love, apparently, doesn't hold up in court the same way ink does. Within weeks, I was sitting in an office listening to a lawyer explain, gently, like he felt sorry for me, that none of this mattered legally. Not the cheating, not the lies, not the DNA. On paper, I was Daniel's mother, which meant I was financially responsible. Child support, monthly payments, a duty of care that didn't disappear just because the truth was ugly. What made it unbearable was knowing that Amy knew. She had known all along. Later, I'd hear whispers, friends of friends, half-muttered comments, that she bragged about it, that she laughed about how easy it was, that she talked about child support like it was a bonus she'd earned, not money meant for a child. I didn't hear those words directly at first, but I could feel them, in the way she smirked during court sessions, in the way she avoided my eyes, like she knew something I didn't. Once, during a hearing, I swear she turned around and winked at me. That was the moment something inside me hardened. I loved Daniel. That hadn't changed. It probably never would. But my love didn't mean I had to quietly accept being deceived, used, and humiliated. Still, I was trapped. I wanted to stay in Daniel's life. I wanted to watch him grow, celebrate birthdays, be there for scraped knees and school plays. But I could not, would not, hand over my paycheck to a woman who had built this entire mess on lies. My lawyer was blunt. The odds aren't great, he said. Unless the biological parent comes forward and we can prove intentional deception, the court will likely hold you responsible. I remember walking out of that office feeling smaller than I ever had before. It felt like the game was rigged, like I'd already lost, and everyone else was just waiting for me to accept it. I almost did. Then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, Aussie. This is Emma. I know this is strange, but I think we should talk, in person. Emma, one of Amy's friends. Or at least she used to be. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I didn't know it yet, but that message was the first crack in Amy's perfect story, and everything was about to change. I stared at Emma's message for a long time before replying. People don't just reach out in the middle of a legal nightmare unless they want something or know something. And coming from Amy's former friend, it felt like stepping into a room where every surface might be booby-trapped. Still, curiosity won. We met at a small cafe on the edge of town, the kind of place people go when they don't want to be recognized. Emma arrived early. She looked nervous, twisting the paper sleeve around her coffee cup like it might come apart if she didn't keep control of it. I'm not doing this to hurt you, she said the moment I sat down. No greeting, no small talk. I just can't keep pretending anymore. That was my first clue that whatever she was about to say was worse than I expected. By then, my life had become a rotation of court dates, legal jargon, and sleepless nights. The judge didn't care how Daniel tucked his head under my chin when he was scared. The court didn't care how many times Ryan had lied. All they cared about was one undeniable fact. My name was on the birth certificate, which meant I was on the hook. Amy, meanwhile, seemed almost energized by the process. Every time we crossed paths in court, she looked polished, calm. Like this wasn't her life unraveling, but a game she was winning. I later learned why. Emma slid her phone across the table toward me, hands shaking. I didn't want to believe it at first, she said, but she wouldn't shut up about it, about the money. I hesitated before picking up the phone. Something in my gut told me that once I saw what was on that screen, there was no going back. The messages were brutal. Amy, laughing in voice notes about how child support was basically free cash. Screenshots of her bragging about shopping sprees, weekend trips, spa days, none of which had anything to do with Daniel. One message made my stomach turn. If anyone asks, I'll just say it's for Daniel. Who's going to check? Another. I've got a friend who knows how to make receipts look legit. I felt heat crawl up my neck, my hands trembling as I scrolled. She knew you were paying because you cared, Emma said quietly. She said that made you easy. Easy. That word hit harder than any insult Amy had ever thrown at me. Emma explained that she'd finally confronted Amy in a group chat, calling her out for using Daniel as leverage. Instead of backing her up, the others turned on Emma. She's his mom. She deserves support. You're being dramatic. When Emma didn't back down, Amy cut her off completely. That's when Emma decided she was done protecting someone who clearly didn't deserve it. By the time I left the cafe, my hands were still shaking, but something else had settled in my chest. Resolve. I took everything Emma gave me straight to my lawyer. He leaned back in his chair, scrolling through the messages, his expression slowly changing. For the first time since this nightmare began, he didn't look apologetic. This, he said carefully, changes things. Not enough to erase my legal status, not yet, but enough to question Amy's credibility, enough to suggest misuse of funds. Enough to justify reopening parts of the case. It wasn't a win, but it was a crack. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying the last year of my life. The cameras I'd installed months ago flashed through my mind, originally meant to ease my anxiety when Ryan stayed out late. I'd almost forgotten about them. Almost. When I finally pulled up the footage, I felt sick. Different women. Different nights. Sometimes while Daniel slept in the next room. It wasn't just betrayal. It was recklessness. That was the night I filed for the final separation from Ryan, officially ending whatever illusion of partnership we had left. But even with him out of the picture, Amy still loomed large, smug, confident, untouchable. Or so she thought. A week later, Emma called me again. There's someone else, she said, another friend. She knows something bigger, something Amy never wanted out. My heart started pounding. What kind of something? Emma hesitated. About Daniel's real biological parent. The words knocked the air out of me. You mean she knows who it is? Yes, Emma said. And Aussie, Amy knew too, while she was pregnant. I closed my eyes, feeling the pieces shift into a new, terrifying shape. If that was true, if Amy had intentionally lied, not just to me, but to everyone, then this wasn't just about child support anymore. This was fraud. And for the first time since this all began, Amy's smirk in that courtroom replayed in my head. Not as a threat, but as a countdown. Because if the truth came out, everything would change. I didn't sleep that night. Emma's words echoed in my head over and over again, each repetition heavier than the last. Amy knew while she was pregnant, knew exactly who Daniel's biological parent was. That single truth reframed everything. The cheating, the confidence, the way she never looked nervous in court. She hadn't been bluffing. She'd been protected by a lie so deliberate it bordered on calculated. When Emma arranged the second meeting, I almost canceled. Part of me wanted to stay frozen in denial because once you hear the full truth, there's no pretending your life can go back to what it was. But I went. The woman's name was Rachel. She didn't look like someone carrying a secret this big. She looked exhausted, the kind of tired that settles into your bones when you've held something in for too long. We sat in her car because she was too scared to be seen in public with me. I didn't want to be part of this, she said, gripping the steering wheel, but I can't keep quiet anymore. Rachel told me that during Amy's pregnancy, Amy had confided in her, late one night, drunk and panicking. Amy had admitted she was certain the baby wasn't Ryan's. She'd named another woman, someone Amy knew personally, someone she worked with. She said the timing made it impossible for it to be you, Rachel continued, but she also said you were safer, more stable, easier to control. I felt my chest tighten. Safer. Easier. Chosen not out of love, but strategy. Rachel handed me a folder. Inside were screenshots of old messages, timestamps lining up perfectly with Amy's pregnancy. In one message, Amy had written, "If I tell her the truth, I lose everything. If I don't, I win." My hands trembled as I read it. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was a plan. The biological parent's name was Megan, a woman Amy had briefly been involved with, then cut off completely once she found out she was pregnant. Megan had no idea a child existed, let alone that she might be Daniel's mother. Rachel leaned closer. I didn't tell Megan myself. I was scared. But Emma found her. She has her number. The car felt too small, the air too thin. Contacting Megan meant crossing a line I couldn't uncross. It meant detonating whatever fragile balance Daniel's life currently had. And yet how could I live with myself if I didn't? That night, I stared at Megan's contact info on my phone for almost an hour. Then I typed, "Hi, you don't know me, but my name is Aussie Peck. This is going to sound unbelievable, but I think we need to talk about Daniel." The response came faster than I expected. "Who is Daniel?" My heart sank. When we met, Megan cried before I even finished explaining. She cried because she'd always suspected something was wrong. Because Amy had vanished from her life without explanation. Because she'd been told she couldn't get pregnant. "I would have wanted to know," she said through tears, "even if it changed everything." The test results confirmed what Amy had tried so desperately to bury. Megan was Daniel's biological mother. Watching her hold him for the first time was both beautiful and devastating. There was an instant connection, something instinctive, undeniable. I felt joy for Daniel and grief for myself. But what surprised me most was Megan's anger. Not at me, at Amy. "She stole something from both of us," Megan said quietly, "and she used you as the shield." The lawyer didn't hesitate once he saw the evidence. "This is paternity fraud," he said. "Intentional, documented, and it changes everything." The case moved fast after that. Amy's confidence cracked the first time Megan appeared in court. The second time, when the messages were entered into evidence, it shattered completely. She tried to deny it, then she tried to minimize it. Then, when neither worked, she cried. But the judge didn't waver. Child support was reversed. Amy was ordered to repay damages. My legal responsibility dissolved the moment the fraud was confirmed. Daniel's custody was transferred to Megan, slowly, carefully, with professionals involved to protect him. On the last day I saw him before the transition began, Daniel hugged me tighter than he ever had. "You're still my mom, right?" he whispered. I swallowed hard. "I'm always someone who loves you," I said. "That doesn't change." As I walked out of the courthouse, the weight I'd carried for over a year finally shifted. Not gone. Never gone. But lighter. Amy didn't look at me as they led her away. She didn't have to. The truth had finally caught up with her. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I knew this story wasn't ending in loss. It was transforming. The quiet that followed the court ruling felt unreal. For so long, my life had been defined by noise, lawyers' voices, Amy's sharp remarks, the constant buzzing anxiety in my head. When it all stopped, I didn't feel victorious. I felt emptied out, like I'd run a marathon fueled by adrenaline and suddenly had nowhere to go. Daniel's transition to living with Megan was handled gently, the way everyone wished Amy had handled the truth from the beginning. Therapists, gradual visits, long conversations framed around reassurance instead of blame. Megan approached motherhood with humility, not entitlement, and that made it easier for me to let go. Easier, but not easy. The first time Daniel didn't reach for me automatically, I had to excuse myself to the bathroom so no one would see my face collapse. I cried silently, gripping the sink, reminding myself that loving him meant stepping back when it was right for him, not me. Megan noticed. "You don't have to disappear," she told me one afternoon while Daniel played on the floor between us. "I'm not trying to erase you. I just want to build something honest." That word, honest, hit me harder than I expected. We worked out a rhythm that felt strange but respectful. I wasn't his legal parent anymore. I wasn't his guardian. But I was someone who showed up, someone he knew was safe. And that was enough. Amy, on the other hand, unraveled. Once the judgment was finalized, she withdrew her custody request entirely. She said she was overwhelmed, that she needed time. The truth was simpler. Without leverage, without money on the line, she lost interest. Watching her step away so easily left a bitter taste in my mouth. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because Daniel deserved better than someone who only showed up when it benefited them. Ryan faded out of the picture soon after. The affair, the lies, the collapse of his image, it all caught up to him. We spoke once, briefly. He apologized again. I didn't stop him, but I didn't forgive him either. Some things don't need closure. What I didn't expect was Caleb. We met through a mutual friend months after everything settled. He was calm in a way that didn't feel performative, asked questions, and actually listened to the answers. When I told him about my past, he didn't flinch. "I'm not scared of complicated," he said. "I'm scared of dishonesty." That was the first green flag I'd seen in years. Our relationship wasn't fireworks. It was steady, secure. And when his ex-girlfriend Lauren resurfaced claiming she just wanted to check in, I felt old fear tighten in my chest. But this time was different. I told Caleb how it made me feel instead of swallowing it. He showed me the messages instead of hiding them. Boundaries were set, clearly, respectfully. No secrets. That transparency healed something in me I didn't realize was still broken. Amy tried one last move. She filed a claim for emotional distress, accusing me of ruining her life by exposing the truth. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been exhausting. The judge dismissed it within minutes. I walked out of that courtroom lighter than I'd walked into any space in over a year. Daniel is thriving now. He laughs easily, sleeps through the night, calls Megan Mom without hesitation, and calls me by my name with the same warmth. It's different, but it's healthy. Sometimes I catch him watching me carefully, like he's making sure I'm still there. I always am. Looking back, I realize this story was never about biology or money. It was about identity, about learning that love doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity, and that boundaries aren't punishments, they're instructions. I didn't lose a child. I gained my truth. And in that truth, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace.